Hi friends! Alright, so you guys really enjoyed that RTA video that I put out, and I got a lot of questions and things on my Discord. And if you guys haven't joined my Discord, make sure you join it, link in the description down below. And in my guild, we were talking about building theories and strategies on how to build a certain unit, and I thought it would make a good video because it's a good educational one that I also taught my guildmates, and thought I would share it with the community. And so the entire topic was, how do you build a unit? What are the things you have to consider when you are building a certain unit, right? And so when I think about building a unit, the first thing I do is I need to think about, alright, so what is this unit trying to do? Or what do I want it to do? And then figure out the set for it. And once I figure out what that set is, I need to figure out what's the weakness to it. And once you can figure out those two, then you can start building an entire strategy around building that unit, right? And so, for example, the question at hand that we had was a Ling Law. Okay? You can see that my Ling Law doesn't have a lot of HP. Yeah? If we were to go here and click this, I only have 28k HP. Right? But I have a good amount of effect resistance. And so they were asking me, this is very squishy, and I've stacked effect resistance, so that doesn't sound like a very good idea. And the entire premise behind me building it like this, right, or shout out to my guildmate Shot, he started doing this, and then we all realized that this is actually really, really OP, and we started doing it as well. And the question is, if we are gonna put, Ling Law on Bloodbath, yeah? What is the damage threshold that she is going to take to kill her? Okay? Because we have to think about the meta. The meta right now, if you're playing against Cleave, it's all about Revelation, right? And so, Revelation doesn't care how much HP you have. It's still going to do that amount of, damage. It's fixed. And so, if that is the case, we know that we're already losing about 40% of our HP. What is the next weakness to Ling Law if you know that we can survive with Lighthouse and Bloodbath? Okay, because the first hit usually takes about 40%. It's usually when you take 2 to 3 revs in the row that's when you lose, right? And so the next weakness is CC. Okay, a Ling Law that is going to get crowd control permanently, or a guaranteed crowd control, is a useless Ling Law because you can't use her. She can't put up her skills. And so if she can't put up her skills, then why did you even draft her? Correct? So once I figured out that, the damage threshold that we're going to receive is about 40% of Revelation, then you plus whatever damage that they have done, which is going to be, inclusive of, your defense and all that kind of stuff, which is about your EHP, right? Estimated max HP. Then we can now think about how do we prevent ourselves from getting CC. Well, the quickest and fastest way we can think about doing that is to just run Bulwark, right? So if we go down here and we hit Bulwark, you can see that Bulwark says, at the start of each battle, at the start of each wave of battle, grant the immunity for 1 turn. And so that is the best way to stop immunity, to stop yourself getting crowd control. Agree? But then again, now we have to bring in a third layer. And the third layer is, if we want to run Lighthouse on Ling Law, can we put Bulwark on her? Let's find out. Okay? Let's go to the archive. Let's look at shells. And let's look at Lighthouse. Alright? These are all the sets available to you. I don't see Bulwark here. Okay? And so if we are trying to run Ling Law on, Bloodbath, because we need to protect ourselves from rev and damage, to mitigate damage, and we have to worry about, your Ling Law taking the damage, cutting your opponent, undoing all the damage that, that first rev unit did, we have to run Lighthouse, because Lighthouse literally gives you 25% max HP, right? It heals you, and then increases your turn meter by another 25%, right? And so this is essentially giving you an extra 25% HP, right? That's one way you can look at it. and an extra 25% turn meter progress. So if you build her relatively fast, somewhere around 260, 280, anywhere between there, chances are the second you get hit by one ref, Lighthouse is gonna proc, you're gonna cut, you're gonna heal up. Okay? So, what else can we run on her if we want to run Bulwark, right? To protect ourselves from CC. Well, the next obvious idea is obviously Supernova. And now, we see Supernova has Bulwark. Cool. It also has Bloodbath, it has Swift Rush, it has all the good stuff, right? Everything a healer wants, it's here. It also gives you additional healing. So when you proc Supernova on the first time, you're gonna max heal, right? And then those Will Press are gonna do a shitload of healing. But then here comes the problem. When you play against Cleave, right, you are going to be taking at least 2 to 3 revs. Can your entire team handle 2 to 3 revelation attacks? Probably not. You probably need to cut, you probably need to heal up and undo what that first revelation unit did, and then go from there, right? So, if we were to run Bulwark just to protect ourselves from CC, we have to run Linglor stupidly fast. Alright? Like obnoxiously fast. So at that point, you are basically sacrificing a lot of, your max HP or your HP to build speed on her. Which also means that if you run speed on her, you are less tanky. So essentially what you're doing here is you're taking away all of its FRS to put it into speed. And then now you have to consider another thing, which is, if I were to put so much speed on Linglor, okay, and she does a S3, then she does a S2, can your team survive after that? Because immunity is going to wear off. Can she survive if people start permanently stunning her? Because the best way to, counter a Kazuya is to bring Linglor. We all know that, okay? And if you want to run Kazuya, and if your opponent runs Kazuya and you bring Linglor, and your Linglor is not fast enough, and you can't get yourself to 310 speed, let's say, which is kind of fucking ridiculous, let's be real here, because neither Lighthouse or Supernova has the other speed one. Let me go into the archive. Let's go back into the shell here. If we look at Supernova, Supernova doesn't have double speed. We only have Swift Rush. So we only are getting to 35%. Same thing goes to Lighthouse. Right? Lighthouse has double speed here. Okay, so you essentially, if you want to run Bloodbath on him, you have to run 8 set Swift Rush, then you have to run 6 sets Swift Smite, which essentially just gives you, a full set of Swift Rush. So getting yourself to 310 speed with Supernova is almost borderline impossible. Okay? That means you are going to, at least take 2 to 3 ref hits. Because we know how ref plays, they're gonna push their units, they're gonna, kill you. So now that we've, this thought about all of that, what is the other way we can counter CC and make, Linglor not susceptible to her other weakness, which is crowd control, if we want to run Lighthouse, right? Because we want to do that cut. Then the next obvious answer is to just run her on effect resistance. Okay? And so if you run her on effect resistance, that means you are, bringing her in with a very high chance of resisting all of the CC. So Obos are going to miss the stun on her, Kazuyos are going to miss the sleep on her, Mios are going to miss the pushback on her, Kraken's going to miss the freeze, Marvel's going to miss the pushback, all of that. Alright, and as long as Linglor takes a turn, your entire team is safe. And you always want to take the first initiative. But you can't put a lot of speed on them. That's why, I built her like this. Okay? Because essentially, she's going to constantly heal herself, which is basically, pseudo HP per se. Okay? Because remember that her healing, let's look at her healing here. Okay? Her healing is up to their max HP. It's nothing to do with hers. It's not like Sanya, which, heals based off her own max HP. Okay? And so let's take a look at S1 here. Let's look at Will's Prayer. Alright? It's also up to their max HP, their healing. Okay? And so, now that we understand this, we know that, Linglor doesn't really need HP. if we are already, mitigating those damage hits of Bloodbath. Okay? And so that is how you should be thinking about building a unit. You first have to think about what do you want to do with her, what is the damage threshold, right, that they can receive or dish out. Then what is the next weakness? And how do we mitigate that to the best of our ability? And then you want to complement all of that with the shell and mold them into one unit. So this is the best example that I can give you because this was what we were talking about. Okay, I'll give you one more example. All right, I'll give you one more example. Let's talk Viper here. Now, we know that Viper is a damage mitigator. He is also a very good disruptor in his passive, because his passive gives you, a 60% chance to counterattack with his S1, and his S1 is a silence. Okay? And every time he uses S1, he's going to get Serpent Skin, and at 4 stacks, his counterattack becomes an AoE dispel 2 buffs with attack down, speed down. Okay? So what do you want to do with him? You essentially, when you draft him into a team, you're either trying to remove buffs or you are trying to counter cleave because of the damage mitigation. And so, regardless, he needs to take a turn because this is going to be arguably your best skill against a cleaver. Putting speed down and attack down and taking away their attack up or whatever they have on them is super, super annoying and painful. And especially if you can proc random silences and they can't use their S2, S3, it's fucking devastating. And so, in order to do that, right, we've built him relatively quick so that he can cut and put pressure on the opponent, but not fast enough where he's just gonna supersede Linglow's turn meter and then get through, be CC'd, and then pass the turn. Okay? And so that's how I've built him. You can see I put more effect accuracy onto him, and I'm actually using that exact same idea that I was talking about, where with Swift Rush and Swift Smite gives you essentially, a 35% extra speed with the additional effect of 20% effect accuracy so that he can have a good amount here, alright? This is still not a lot, but it's still pretty good, okay? Plus Bloodbath, this makes him a lot more tankier, so you can see that I only have about 25k HP with 2.3k defense, which is good for him because Revelation units, we are already taking the 40% from Revelation. Let's deal and mitigate the actual damage, okay? Further with defense and Bloodbath. And so this is how I built him, okay? And that's what I thought about. What is the damage threshold? We know that he's going to get an extra 25% HP from Lighthouse, quote-unquote pseudo HP because of healing. He's going to get pushed to the front, put pressure on the opponent, so, the first hit is already going to get mitigated by Lighthouse, and then mitigated furthermore with Linglaw. That's how I'm thinking, because I'm trying to meld the team together. And then he's going to hit his S3, he's going to put attack down, and now that you have, semi-healed up, your team's a lot more safer, your tank team, okay? And so this is how you should be thinking about building units. I thought this was a pretty good educational, chat that I had with my guild, and so I thought I'd share it with YouTube. But that is the video, guys. If you guys like this content, make sure you like, comment, subscribe. Let me know if you want to see more RTA educational videos, and I'll catch you guys next time.